Welcome to Smalls Talks Balls, presented by Champions Round. And now your host, Steph Smalls.
What's up, everyone? Smalls Talks Balls is back. My 32-team preview took a little bit of a hiatus. We're finally going to finish the AFC North here, and to help me with that, to talk about the Bengals from Cornell. It's not from Cornell. That was just my dad joke. Here is Taylor Cornell, host of the Who Dey Den Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing extraordinary. How are you, Steph?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited. We have not done a show together in what feels like a very, very long time.
Yes.
And to talk about the Bengals is obviously going to be a blast here because they are coming off one of these one drive short of being basically one of the most improbable Super Bowl victories ever. Mm-hmm. So how are we feeling going into the new season?
I don't know how to describe the feeling because I've never felt this way because we've never won a playoff game in my lifetime until last year. But it is like whatever excited is, but like times 20 because you're always excited even if your team's not good. But it's like now you have expectations. So yeah, it's like an excitement, but like, you know, there's expectations. Like we have to win some games this year.
Right. And so I remember that excitement because I've kind of gone backwards now, and like now I'm in like this place of misery being a Giants fan. And I know that I used to know that excitement, don't know it anymore. But one of the exciting things about the Bengals is like they're literally still a team on the rise, which is not something you can always say about a team that just basically almost won the Super Bowl. Like they have a 25-year-old stud QB, young group of offensive playmakers, beefed up O-line, which we know I was very much on the side of taking Chase was the right move there. Not everyone thought so. And they have a very athletic and opportunistic defense. So I am so excited to see what this team does. Why don't you give me the landscape for next year? Like set the expectations going into this. I was going to ask you about the draft, but let's just get into it because this is one team, you know, I think everyone wants to talk poorly on them, but I think it comes from a fan base jealousy. Like, oh, they can't run it back. But can they? Because I think they can.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting season for Bengals fan base because we're in a position we haven't been in before where like we're the villains now. And I think what you said was right about the being a little bit jealous, which, you know, hopefully I can say that about other fan bases without triggering anybody. But it used to be like the lovable Bengals and we always would like lose and we weren't really a threat to do anything. So I was like, oh yeah, it's the Bengals. And now that we're winning and we're like beating the Chiefs twice in a season and like Chiefs fans hate us now. We demolished the Ravens. They hate us even more than they did before. I think it's from a place of like, okay, these guys are a team to be reckoned with for the foreseeable future. You mentioned the youth on the team. So there's not really an end in sight, you know, anything can happen, but you look at the core of the team and it looks like it's going to be in place for a little bit here, especially the key guys. So I think as far as expectations go, pretty much everyone's bare minimum has to be getting to the playoffs and returning to the playoffs. And I think if you ask most Bengals fans, and actually one of the beat writers for The Athletic did a fan survey thing. And that was one of the questions, what are your expectations? And the majority of fans said return to the Super Bowl, which I don't think fans realize how difficult that is to do.
Yeah.
I think that can be what everybody is like hoping happens. But I think like realistic bare minimum expectations get to the playoffs and you know, you hopefully are winning at least one or two playoff games again to get more of that experience with your team. But yeah, I think the fan base in general is just expecting like we're going back to the Super Bowl. But like you said, I think we can. I absolutely think we can. The team is built to run it back, returning pretty much the same team as last year with an improved offensive line, which was the one weakness we had.
Right. Yeah. And it's so funny because I was just thinking, like, I remember this might have been like a while back. I was like, I forgot the Bengals were a team. Like that was kind of the joke. It was like, no one really hated the Bengals, but like you kind of forgot they were there. Like you would play against them and like almost feel like a little bit bad. And it wasn't like you weren't fearful of the Bengals for a really long time, but now you are. I mean, you're in a place where you have Burrow, who, and I have, you know, I was listening to this podcast and I'll just ask you now where they're talking about how Herbert is a better quarterback than Burrow. And I actually want to hear your response to that. I would love, because I think there's a little bit of a flashiness to Herbert.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that can be debated. So would love to hear from you, your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, my politically correct response is if you have no ties to either fan base, you know, what quarterback are you wanting to start a team with? You can't go wrong with either one. Now, obviously, I have a lot of bias, but I think like what's interesting about it is the argument for Justin Herbert is related to some of the tools that he has that Joe doesn't have as much of. So like Joe does not have as strong of an arm as Justin Herbert, but you saw last year that does not limit Joe Burrow, like the long touchdowns to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like it's not a limitation by any means. I think what Joe has and what annoys me the most about the conversation is the crowning of Justin Herbert as being the next best thing in the NFL. And he's never gone to the playoffs. He's not won a meaningful game yet. He has not won a meaningful game in the regular season or, you know, even getting to the postseason. So I think Joe has that it factor, the thing that you can't quite quantify, but you just know it when a quarterback has it. And you've heard a lot of former players and current players talk about that factor that Joe has. And, you know, a lot of times you'll see quotes that are like, I don't want to compare anybody to Tom Brady, but if I had to, it's going to be Joe Burrow. And it's just it's not just what he does on the field. It's that extra thing he has.
It's like that swag. Like, I don't know how to explain it. He's got swagger. Like there's something, and it's like that cool, calm, collected confidence that I think also like off the field and on the field, you see that displayed. And I think there's something to that. Like, you know, last year, and this podcast was it was weird. It was a Bengals podcast, but they were kind of ripping Joe Burrow a little bit, which I was like, this is not totally making a lot of sense here.
You're not allowed doing that.
Yeah, I'm like, you can't really have what is happening here? You're not Giants fans talking about Daniel Jones. Like, you're literally talking about the quarterback that took you to a Super Bowl. So maybe we should settle down with that. And they were talking about his development and how he can be better in year 3. And what do you think that looks like for him? Like, is it limiting? I mean, because I'm trying to think about it. I'm like, what can he do? I'm looking at interceptions. I guess you could maybe come up with, he had like a couple costly ones that were returned for touchdowns, but he kind of eliminated that towards the end of the regular season too. So what does his development look like into year 3? Because thinking about it, you'd think he's been in the league longer too. Yeah. Like he's got that, and you're right. It's like that you can't describe that confidence.
Yeah. I think like you look at Joe's game and you don't see a ton of obvious holes. Like he has to improve on X, Y, Z. If you want to pick something apart about him, you can say he holds onto the ball too long. And we saw all the sacks last year, and a lot of those were on the offensive line of how poor they played. But there was also some times where it was he's just holding on too long and he just wants to make a play. And you kind of live with those, though. Like as a fan, I'm like, could he improve on that and throw some away and take less hits? Sure. But you're also like okay with it when he stands in the pocket and then delivers a strike to Higgins in the middle of the field for 30 yards. Like then you're not thinking about, the hit. You're thinking about the big gain. So that's an area maybe he can improve on. And I think like one area that not necessarily he needs to improve on, but we will see an improvement in is like the amount of time that he has to throw the ball. In the games where he was not pressured much, he was like disgusting picking apart defenses, like precise and just so like
just embarrassing everyone else. Like
precision. I don't know if you've done the Ravens yet, but that's a team that they picked apart. Steelers picked them apart. Like he just has this extra, like if you give him that extra amount of time, not even extra, just give him a normal amount of time that a normal quarterback should have, and he's going to make the right decision. You know that with Joe, he's a smart enough quarterback to make the right decision. He's not going to force something. He's not going to make a mistake. I think you're going to see this year. It's like, what can he improve on? I mean, you can't really improve on a 70% completion percentage. He was extremely efficient in everything he did this year, but I think you're going to see more counting stats. Like you're going to see more passing yards, more touchdowns, because he's going to have more time, less drives stalling out with sacks and things like that.
Which is crazy because, and and a lot of people know that I love the O-line. It's something I talk about all the time. I talk about how nothing matters unless, like, if the O-line sucks, but they kind of took that away from your team ruined my brand, is what I'm trying to say. They ruined my brand, but I'm very excited to see what they're able to do, especially with the weapons that he has. They were still one of the league's best offenses, despite the fact that their O-line put in harm's way a lot. 51 sacks during the regular season is like ridiculous. So I'm excited to see what they went into free agency and they made some nice signings there. And I think they made a point to go ahead and get him more of that protection. what do you think the starting O-line looks like for the Bengals next year? Because I can't figure out what it's going to look like.
4 of the 5 spots are pretty much set in stone as much as they can be.
It's that
left tackle, you got Jonah Williams. He'll be there again. Big year for him. Looking to see him take another step. Are you drinking a LaCroix?
Yeah.
Dude, shout out.
Yeah, shout out LaCroix. Not a sponsor, could be a sponsor.
Limoncello is the bomb.
Have you tried it? It's
I have
so good. It's a great, everyone,
pack.
great summer beverage. Recommend. Awesome.
Shout out LaCroix. So you'll have Jonah Williams on left tackle, free agent signing Lyle Collins and right tackle. We've got Alex Kappa, who's going to be at right guard, came over from Tampa Bay, and then you're going to have Ted Karras at center. And those 4 spots are locked in. Left guard is the only real battle, and it's Jackson Carman's probably going to get the first crack at things. He was a second-round pick last year, struggled at times, flashed at times, but also struggled more often than he flashed. But if he's not able to do it, it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. Cordell Volson is a guy we took in the draft in the mid-rounds that apparently coaches are pretty excited about. He's what offensive line coach Frank Pollock describes as a glass eater. Just a real nasty dude. He was in the locker room doing like a not really like an official press conference sort of thing, but like he was answering questions and stuff, and he's just got like a dip in, and I'm just like, yeah, like that's the like big burly dude that you're just like,
I love that.
Yeah, he's
gonna like he's just there to like just destroy people, and like that's like the best part. Like the O-line is like, I'm just here to like come in, hurt people, and leave. Like protect my quarterback and be done with it. And I think he's gonna get that, which is crazy because you look at his stats. It's like just the final 5 games alone. We're looking at like completing 72.3% of his passes, averaging 355 yards per game. Like what? That is absurd. So I'm looking forward to see what he's able to do. And with that comes the talk about the wide receivers. And before we talk about Jamar Chase, I just want to throw some respect on Higgins' name because he quietly posted 74 catches for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like these are wide receiver 1 numbers on a lot of teams. Like we're talking about a wide receiver core that like people would love to have Higgins on their team. And that's just your electric wide receiver 2. Like he provides so much for Burrow. So I have to throw a little bit of respect on him and what he's capable of doing. I think I'll add a fantasy twist to this here because we met doing fantasy football. So with T. Higgins, like he is definitely still an asset. And I say this a lot where you can take wide receiver, more than one wide receiver from a team if they have a productive offense. T. Higgins is worth drafting, correct?
Yeah, I think like it's not a bold prediction by any means. Just my general prediction on T. Higgins this year is that I think his first 2 seasons, he's had 6 touchdowns each season. And I think this is the year he cracks double-digit touchdowns, which if you're talking an extra 20-plus points on fantasy production, assuming his yardage doesn't change at all, which I think it will. He's missed time in his rookie season, missed a couple games last year. If you look at his per game stuff, like he would put up 1,100, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. You're right at there in you're definitely low in mid wide receiver 1 range for fantasy. So the reason I think he's gonna get more touchdowns this year, more red zone opportunities, is we had so many drives that either stalled out in the red zone because of sacks usually. And we had so many drives that were quick hitters, 50-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase, 70-yard touchdown. Like we had some of those big ones that's going to be hard to replicate that many explosive plays.
Yeah.
So I think if we're in the red zone more often, you're going to see more opportunities for T. Higgins. You can tell once we get a little bit closer to the red zone, T. Higgins is a guy, like obviously Burrow and Jamar are always like on the same page, but you've also got T, who is like just this beast out there. He's so tall. Has the ability to kind of like moss the defensive backs and things like that. So I'm excited to see him get a little bit more involved as we get closer to the goal line.
And then you just like casually have Boyd too, like this team, and then you you finally have an O-line. Like I don't think people like fans of teams that have good O-lines and have had a good O-line and that's all they know. I don't think anyone realizes like how painful it is to watch a bad O-line. So all you need is like a beyond capable O-line now, right? And then the success that could be had is crazy. And I think even obviously Chase is going to benefit from that. The whole team is going to benefit from that. I think even Joe Mixon alone, right? So I might even jump away from Chase. We know Chase is obviously going to make a very big name for himself in this league, so I won't beat that. But Mixon, this is going to be the best O-line I think he's played behind his whole career. So what do you think the expectation is for him next year?
Yeah, and he's like another guy too that it's hard to say, oh, he's going to be even better than last year, because if you look, he had a really good season last year. But there was a stat out there from I'm gonna credit the wrong person. I feel like
That's
it might
all
have.
right.
I feel like it was Warren Sharp. I'm pretty sure it was Warren Sharp.
Shout out
And
Warren Sharp.
yeah, Cincinnati ranked bottom of the league last year, or top of the league, depending on how you consider. They had the highest percentage of running back rush attempts where the running back was hit in the backfield. 52% of the carries they were hit in the backfield. So over half the time, Joe Mixon, or he got the majority of the carries, but if another running back got the carry, half the time they're getting hit in the backfield. And so you're relying on a lot of make a guy miss, break a tackle, just to fall forward for 1 or 2 yards. And I think Mixon is obviously the clear beneficiary. He had 72% of the running back touches on the team last year. Even after the bye and into the playoffs, that was up to like almost 80% of the running back touches went to Mixon. So he's one of those, like, if you want to go back to a fantasy perspective, also even like one of the rare workhorse bell cow type of guys. Like there's a lot of split backfields, and sure, we might see Chris Evans involved a little bit this year in more of a pass catching role, but he's not going to be taking a lot of money or a lot of stats from Joe Mixon. Not taking any money.
He could take money.
I was going to say, I don't know. He's taking his money.
That's what I do. Yeah, stop stealing people's lunch money. What are you doing there, Evans? But Joe Mixon has always been like he is just a very good talent, and I think I'm most excited to see him. And my excitement, especially like leading up into this show and researching the Bengals and reading more articles on the Bengals, is like now I want him in fantasy, because I think he's kind of a sneaky value now because of, he gets an immediate bump because of this O-line, but no one's really talking about it enough. And I don't know if it's clouded this like Super Bowl hangover or whatever it is that everyone has. But a part of this team that I'm not very excited about is the tight ends. Like it's just, Hayden Hurst doesn't do it for me here. So, he might block just enough there to add a little bit more. Where do you think Hayden Hurst fits into this scheme here?
I mean, in this offense, the way it's run and with the other playmakers makes it really hard to get excited about anybody at tight end. I think CJ Uzomah was a fun player, especially for the Bengals, because he was a big culture guy and whatever else. But if you look at just production alone, he had less than 500 yards receiving last year, and that was a career high for him. And I think Hayden Hurst is better than CJ Uzomah, so I wouldn't be shocked if he had 600 yards maybe, but it's not like Hayden Hurst is going to be hauling in 10 touchdowns and 750 yards. Like, I just don't see it. I mean, the tight end is going to be the 4th or 5th option on most of these. You think about your 3 receivers. You got Mixon out of the backfield, who was really involved last year catching the ball out of the backfield.
That's the exact point I was going to make.
For 4 years.
Mixon is going to be involved in the passing game much more than we've seen. And I think they're going to do that before they go and give the ball to Hayden Hurst.
Exactly. Yeah. Last year, Mixon had 42 catches. It was his second most of his career. But he was just really involved out of the backfield, something that Bengals fans have been like asking for years now, of like, use him like a bell cow. Don't take him off the field every 3rd down. And so we saw a little bit of that, and I can't imagine that they're now going to be like, you know what, we'd rather give the ball to Hayden Hurst. No disrespect to Hayden Hurst. Good dude, but his role is going to be, I think, very minimal as far as it relates to counting stats on offense.
So we are not going after Hayden Hurst in fantasy football.
No,
yeah, but I do love, like, I love everyone's excitement for it, and I love Hayden Hurst. I love him off the field. I love him on the field, but he's just one of the, his fantasy football time is kind of gone to the way. I don't know that it was ever really there, but we'll get into the AFC North as a whole. Who could give the Bengals, not you? I try not to say that. Everyone goes back and forth. Could you say like our team? Like, I never know what the right phrasing is there, but I feel like we've invested enough, especially if you've been on the bad side of a team, then technically you're emotionally invested. But who in this division could give you guys like a little bit of a run for your money, or do you think that you're going straight for winning again?
I mean, I'll start with the team I'm least concerned about, and that is definitely the Steelers. I'm just not at all concerned about them. And I say that with like an asterisk, right? Like any of these, really anywhere in the NFL, divisional battles can be like a coin flip. Doesn't really matter. I
Mhm.
mean, we beat the Steelers a couple years ago with Ryan Finley, and we had no business winning that game on Monday Night Football, and we beat
Finley!
them. So it's like, not to say, hey, we're gonna sweep all these. Like, could we split with the Steelers? Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. But as far as they're giving us a run for our money for the division, I don't see it. Browns are like the big question mark because you don't know what you're getting with Watson. But
Mhm.
even assuming he gets at least half of a season, 6 to 8 games, I'm not sure that all of a sudden he comes in and just picks up where he left off 2 years ago. So the Ravens, kind of by default, are the team that, if they're healthy, because they did struggle with injuries last year, you do have a defending MVP at quarterback still, and Lamar Jackson still talented. And yes, everyone wants to knock like their pass catchers and wide receivers, but it's kind of the team it's been, and it's worked for them for the most part. Now, when they get to the playoffs, they don't do a whole lot, but like Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and if J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards get healthy, like that's
Mhm.
enough on offense, and they've got a really, really nice defense, at least name-wise. We'll see whether they all perform up to
Yeah.
their potential, but they're the team that like gives me a little bit of pause to say I think it's going to be jockeying for position with them to win the AFC North.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, and it's so funny. A lot of doing these divisional breakdowns, a lot of people are obviously like a little bit lower on the Bengals, which is so funny because it definitely is coming rooted from like jealousy. And then you also have, the Browns are in a weird spot with quarterback. Then you have the Ravens, who we haven't. I mean, last year they were completely decimated. Like their roster could not. I don't even know how they won as many games as they did with what they had on the field. And then you have the Steelers, who, unfortunately for Steelers fans, who I don't feel bad for because they literally haven't come in fourth in like the division since 1999. So before a lot of these kids were even alive or a thought yet, is now they're in a rebuild. And that's kind of what, not a rebuild, but they have to refresh a little bit. Now you have Big Ben gone. So I think a lot of that comes from jealousy, and that the Bengals made it this far, which obviously you're seeing from across the entire league here. But I think this division run is going to run a lot through these defenses. So talk to me about the Bengals defense a little bit.
I think the Bengals defense is criminally underrated.
Yes,
for the majority of last year, they were top 10. I mean, you could, what metric do you want to look at? If you just want to keep it simple and say scoring defense, points allowed, whatever, they were top 10 for the majority of last year. As the season tailed on, they kind of went more towards the middle of the pack. But as you look at the defense, I think there are some legitimate concerns depth-wise behind Trey Hendrickson when he missed snaps because he had an injury. I don't think he really ever missed an entire game, but he would miss like a quarter or something. I mean, the pass rush just disappears. So, I mean, they're counting on Joseph Asai this year. Bengals fans probably are counting on him a little bit too much, but he flashed in his one preseason game last year, sacked Tom Brady in the preseason. So therefore, he will lead the league in sacks this year. But I think if Osai can develop into a good pass rusher, rotational, him, Hubbard, and Hendrickson, you've got a really formidable front there. You've got DJ Reader, who is really one of the best nose tackles in the league, but nobody cares about nose tackles, so nobody talks about him.
I care.
Thank you. This hog molly's in the middle. Logan Wilson is extremely underrated. I think if we win that game last year, he's the MVP of the Super Bowl.
You've got what's his name? You've got Jeffrey Gunter out of Coastal Carolina in round 7.
That's right, baby.
He could be your starting edge.
Might be that guy.
Happen.
Might be that guy.
Know.
Zachary Carter. We drafted him round 3.
That's true.
He might be working for a pass rushing position. I think the defensive backfield. I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Eli Apple, but he is a starting cornerback for us.
God, I didn't even think of that. Doing all that research.
He used to play for the
yes, I know his mother very well. she's
Annie.
Something else. Yeah. Oh, Annie Apple, you are something else. Eli Apple, how much longer are you guys stuck with that guy?
Just 1 year.
God, good. Thank goodness, right? I mean, granted, again, like, I feel bad, but I don't feel bad for Eli Apple at the same time. And it's one of those things where, like, we can all be like, oh, he's trash. He also starts for an NFL team. So it's like,
he played very well last year. He played very well. I would say, like, definitely exceeded my expectations, but he just has a reputation. And then he kind of exit on social media. So he kind of just embraces that role.
Well, he's a target on his back now. It's like the same thing with Zeke and his like tattoo on his belly. It's like the second you do something wrong, like people are just gonna rip you. And that happens with Eli Apple because he kind of asked for it too. Like, what did he tweet out? Like something about Saints fans. Like, what are you you're asking for it right now, sir? That's you're getting exactly what you asked for here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's I don't know if I would describe him as underrated. I would say he's probably maybe a little underappreciated for what he did do last year.
Yeah.
I think the
people just think he's trash. He's not trash.
He's not trash. He's a formidable starting cornerback. He is by no means one that you're super comfortable on an island the entire game, and he will get burned from time to time. But he's formidable enough that they're not just going to pick on him for 200 yards.
And a little memeable. You can meme him a couple.
Yeah, he's memeable. He's memeable. I think the big question now with the defense is Jesse Bates. I mean, that's like this big cloud hanging over the team. I think there's zero chance that he doesn't play this year. Some are concerned that he holds out. And I just can't see someone saying, hey, I'm not going to make $13 million this year. But hey, maybe everybody's a little bit different. But it didn't work out well for Le'Veon Bell, different position. But I just can't imagine other NFL players think, you know what, I'm going to sit out an entire year making no money and cash in next year.
He's also extremely talented. Like, get on the football field, dude. Like, you're I always thought that he was more like, talk about underrated. Like, I think that he is really underrated. He's been like randomly grew into like one of my favorite players. I think that he's playing, right?
Yeah, he's playing. I think he's holding out through camp. I think he'll probably like sign his franchise tender like after the second preseason game. We'll show up for the third preseason game and not play any snaps, but he'll be there. And then, week 1 he's there. I think the concern from Bengals fans too is he didn't play well last year in the regular season at all. Had one of his worst seasons, and even admitted throughout the season, hey, the contract thing was distracting me. I need to lock in. And then was like lights out in the playoffs, making plays for us, ball hawking, interceptions against Mahomes, against Tannehill, like huge plays at huge parts of the game. I think there's a concern that, it's going to be a distraction again. But on the other hand, he's going to be playing for a contract. I don't see us franchising him a second time because it's just already kind of rocky there in the relationship. So he's playing for a long-term contract from some other team next year, and he wants to get paid. So I don't think this is a guy that's going to be sandbagging it out there this year. He knows he's playing for the rest, like his next big contract. So I expect like pretty good play out of him this year. It's just going to be kind of an awkward situation until he actually shows up.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, we'll start wrapping this up. I'll fire off a couple more questions for you here so I don't keep you all day. I feel like we actually touched on the bases. Like, this was a very smoothly run breakdown. I'm very pleased with that. What do you think? Okay, give me a record prediction.
11-6.
That's good. I like that.
I was going to go 12-5, but I'm saying like, be realistic. Don't be such a homer.
Right.
11-6.
Which is what I tell Giants fans all the time. Like, you guys got your feelings hurt. Like, last year I predicted us to win 5 games. Like, so we didn't even get there. You guys all hurt your own feelings saying 7 or 8. Like, you have to be realistic a little bit there. AFC, who do you think, like, give me like the 3 teams that pose the biggest problem or threat to the Bengals?
Definitely the Bills. I think that you look overall and say they're probably one of the more complete teams in the NFL. I give pause before I just crown the Bills as the best team in the AFC when I'm like, hey, we won the AFC last year and we returned the same team except for, like I said, improving our only weakness, but nobody wants to say we're the most complete team. So I'm a little tender around that subject, but I would say the Bills. I think it's weird a little bit that the Chiefs are also just presumed like they're going to, again, be contending for an AFC title. I would be a fool to count them out because you still have Mahomes and you still have Andy Reid.
Yeah.
But I am not like, I guess I'm just not as high on them this year without Tyreek Hill. Like that would be like if the Bengals lost Jamar Chase this year and everybody just ignores it and just assumes we're going to get back to the AFC Championship like that. There's no way. Everyone would be like, no, you lost your biggest playmaker. Yes, you still have T. Higgins. Yes, you still have Tyler Boyd, but you're missing Jamar Chase. And nobody is really concerned about the fact that Tyreek Hill's gone. It's like, well, you still have Mahomes and Kelsey. And I'm like, you lost Tyreek Hill and replaced him with Juju.
Their roster is like weakened again. Whereas I think last season we saw it get weekend already, and now you're like taking a really big hit in Tyreek Hill. So I'm with you. I have been lower on I was lower on them last year, but again, you can't count the Chiefs out either.
I'm not allowed to probably like flip a question to the host, but I've noticed people are a lot higher on Denver because of the Russell Wilson acquisition. Do you think they are someone that you would say, hey, as Bengals fans, you should be concerned about Denver?
No.
Okay. I don't either. I thought it was just me.
Oh God. Listen, one, like Russell Wilson, and maybe it's like a little bit of my just like dislike for his corniness and how he presents himself. Like, I think there is
Let's ride.
There is a little bit like he's just Mr. Unlimited. Like, it's too much for me. But I think that like Denver doesn't realize, and the Denver fan base doesn't realize, and someone's going to clip this up and I'm going to get roasted for it when they end up going to the Super Bowl. But like, it's not easy to just get a new quarterback, get a new coach, trade away some of your pieces, and then suddenly be like this big threat. Like it actually doesn't work like that. Like it's not just this simple like plug in and whatever. There was really big changes that happened there. And I think that Denver also being in the division that they are, they're going to be faced with a little bit more challenges than they expect. And that's if everyone stays healthy. Then you look at areas of their roster that there isn't that much depth there. I think that, there are players. I like some of those pieces for fantasy, but I'm not putting a futures bet on Denver to win the Super Bowl. People are going a little bit, all of a sudden Russell Wilson is like the hottest commodity.
I know.
Like, no one felt that way until he got to Denver. Yeah. Now we're like all in on Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it's weird. So I'm not alone on that. I guess in the same division, I'll give some credit after I previously maybe ditched Justin Herbert, but like I'll give credit to the Chargers that on paper they look like a very solid team offensively and defensively. So yes, I would say, would I be shocked if we meet them in the playoffs? No, not at all. But I'm not going to say I'm scared of them because I've never seen Justin Herbert play in the playoffs. So I can't say that he's going to, step up in that situation or whether he's going to crumble. So I'm like, yeah, they could be there, but I'm not necessarily scared of them. I think the Bengals, if I'm even trying to be an unbiased, which I can't, but if I was trying to, I think you'd be very hard pressed to say they're not one of the top 4 teams. And I think you could easily say they're a top 2 team.
I very much agree with you. And I think that boosted O-line too. I don't think that people realize how big of a difference, like I was saying earlier, you don't realize how much an O-line impacts a team until you go from a really crappy O-line to like a halfway decent O-line or better. So I will ask you one last question, then let you get out of here. Give me like your one hot take for next season. It doesn't have to be Bengals related. It could be whatever you want. It can't be Bengals related. I don't care.
Yeah, and some people might say like that's not that hot, but I've kind of been on the train of related to the Tyreek Hill thing that Patrick Mahomes is not going to. I mean, he was an MVP 4 years ago, and people want to talk like he was an MVP last year and the year before and the year before. It's like it's been a while since he won the MVP, guys. He's still really good, but it's been a while.
Remember when he was supposed to like win more Super Bowls than Tom Brady?
Yeah. Like let's just chill a little bit. So I actually think Burrow's going to have a better season than Patrick Mahomes. And then to spice it up a little bit, I think Joe Burrow is winning the MVP. I mean, I think there's like a very clear path to that. Unfortunately, when I looked at odds, depending on where you go, he's like 5th in odds maybe or something. So it wasn't like enough to make it feel like it was like, so I was like, maybe that's not that hot of a take. He's already top 5, but I think like you look like you could have made an argument. I would not have taken him, as an MVP over Rodgers last year, but like you could have made an argument if you want to look at some of the PFF grade and like all these other big time throws and whatever leading his team. Like he could have been in the conversation last year, and that was with an offensive line that was allowing him to get sacked 4 times a game. So
for sure,
look out.
I love that. Everyone go sprinkle on Joe Burrow to win MVP now. That's what you need to do. All right, this is awesome. I'm finally done with the AFC North. It took me a while to get through these, but I'm pumped. This is a good division. Be sure to subscribe, and then you let everyone know where they can find you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm on Twitter @ Taylor Cornell, and I used to dabble in some fantasy football conversation. I'm almost predominantly Bengals now, so I'm getting a little less into like the fantasy and more into actual NFL talk, which is fun. And I have a podcast, the Who Dey Den, out wherever you listen to podcasts, and of course it is Bengals focused as well. Got a couple great guests coming up, some beat writers for the Bengals, break down some training camp stuff. So check it out if you're interested in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Be sure, guys, check him out. Awesome Bengals stuff. All the content you want is with Taylor, like the school, Cornell.
That's
and
right.
We're going to get out of here until next time. Catch ya.
Who Dey?